Looks like we're live. Hello everyone and welcome to yet another Azuzin session. Let's make a little bit of an announcement and officially start the stream. Hello everyone, welcome. I'm really glad to see you all today. So let's do the usual red circle and say live on Twitch. And what are we doing today on twitch.television? So today we are coding in Go while Google is spying on me, on us in that case, I suppose. Right, so let me give the link to twitch.tv/coding. Right, and I'm gonna ping also everyone who's interested in being pinged. There we go, the stream has officially started. And today we are developing something unusual, something that I don't usually develop on the streams, but I needed to do the chores, so I decided to stream that anyway. So today we're developing Gatekeeper. Right, Gatekeeper is the chatbot that's sitting in the Twitch chat and also Discord chat and answers the commands and some stuff like that. Right, so there's a special command in here. Literally called Gatekeeper, right? So as you can see, somebody already used it, and basically it's the chatbot that answers that specific command. So that's what it is. Right. So and the you can find the source code in here if you're interested. I'm gonna copy paste it in the chat, of course. And also for people who watch on YouTube, I'm gonna also put that in the description. And today's topic, the feature that I want to implement today is actually related to the commands. Let's take a look at how we handle commands within the bot, right? So let's actually go to Gatekeeper, right? And I have two executables within the chatbot actually, right? I have two executables. The first executable is called Gatekeeper. It's the main bot. It's the main process that connects to Twitch and Discord and listens to your messages and then responds back. And there's also Gaslighter, right? So on top of connecting to different services like Twitch or Discord, Gatekeeper also connects to the database. It uses the Postgres database. It stores all of its data there. Right, so and essentially if I want to modify something within a database but I don't want to use PostgreSQL directly, I have a special command line tool, right, that has predefined commands of usual things that I want to do, right, and it basically connects to the database directly by passing the bot and modifies the database, and it just exits. Like it's a command line tool for configuring the bot, right? So the bot itself is called Gatekeeper. The command line for configuring the bot and connecting to the database by passing the bot is called Gaslight. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Right, so we handle commands within the Gatekeeper, right? So we're not going to do anything with Gaslighter right now, maybe a little bit later, we'll see. So we've got some stuff from enumer8 _ thank you for 100 bits with the message. Twitch isn't letting me subscribe no matter what, so I'll just cheer bits until I can have membership of all your epic clubs. That's kind of weird, right? So let me know if you want to have an access to Discord, like just let me know your nickname and I'm gonna trust you manually if that's what you need. Oh yeah, and the chat says we also need to have a Girlbosser at some point. Yeah, I don't know what it's gonna be. What's gonna be the Girlbosser, right? If the Gatekeeper is the bot itself and the Gaslighter is the configuration tool, what is a Girlbosser? Library, maybe it should be library. Yeah. So and as you can see, we are using Go, right? And using Go in 2023 is unethical, but well, not really. I don't know, right? It's just like depends on your opinion, right? Because everyone is outraged how Google is planning to add telemetry to Go, right? So they literally plan to add telemetry to the language. Like if you Google it up, Go telemetry, right? So this is like a hotly debated topic, so yeah, we can't really find anything about that. So can I do go lang telemetry GitHub? Can we find the open telemetry Go? Okay, so telemetry and Go toolchain, yeah, this one, right? So essentially, and justification is so weak, right? I'm not really sure like it's gonna go through, right? So but I actually strongly oppose this kind of thing, right? So I really against telemetry, to be fair, but that's like a topic for another time, so I can talk about that for like an entire stream. But yeah, so, and I do plan eventually to rewrite my project in something else, right? But since it takes time and effort, I just don't do that. Right. And here's an interesting thing. I'm pretty sure the reason why they decided to even suggest it right now is because they know that everyone already depends on Go and nobody's gonna rewrite their huge projects in anything else, and those everyone just gonna suck it up. They fucking know that. They calculated the precise time when to start slowly pushing that, because they know you can't do shit about that. It's just like, that's such a fucking Google thing. It's just like, my god. Anyway. So, but by the way, you may say there's not that many alternatives to Go, maybe for you, but I have a pretty cool alternative to Go. I have an access to Jai Beta. And usually I don't like to write my projects in Jai Beta because I don't like the fact that I can't share the code because other people can't run the code on their machine. But this project, it doesn't really meant to run on your machine. It's meant to run on my machine. It's my project. There is a lot of like hard-coded things specifically for my channel. You literally can't reuse this bot for your channel. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I just like don't have time to make a general purpose bot. I'm making like a very specialized bot for my channel, and it has a lot of things that are literally hard-coded for my channel because it's just easier for me. So I'm doing that only for myself, not because I'm an asshole. I am an asshole, but I'm doing that not because of that. Right? I'm doing that because it's just like doesn't take too much resources, right? So making a general purpose bot is not my goal. Right, and Jai seems to be like a perfect language for this, right? I don't need to make sure that it works on other people's machine. I do it for myself, and yes, it's just like perfect. And Jai is a very good alternative to Go. Like, it implements a lot of things from Go as well, right? So, but that's a topic for another time. Okay, so I'm gonna put that in the description as well, right? So just for the people who are watching on YouTube potentially, right? So because I think I want the software development community be aware of that, right? So everyone can make their own decision whether they want to be spied by Google or they don't want to be spied by Google. You're gonna be spied by Google anyway, by the way, because you're using Chrome or Chromium. But I mean, do we want to give Google even more power than it already has? I don't know, maybe. Do we have choice? Maybe not. Anyways, so yeah, we've got another sub. Thank you so much, dsopez123. Thank you. So just a second, I need to double check some stuff. All right. Okay. So, and speaking of hard coding things, right? That's precisely what I want to work on today, right? If we go to the Gatekeeper thingy, and we go to the module that handles specifically commands, right? So there is a function that evaluates the commands. There we go, right? So eval command, right? It accepts the connection to the database, of course, because the commands may want to modify the database. It accepts the definition of the command. The command is usually like a structure or something like that, right? So it is a structure which is basically name and arguments, right? An argument, you can only have one argument right now. It's just like a string that you put after the command, right? So that's a very simple thing, name and argument. And a command environment. This one is a little bit more interesting because it's an interface, right? It's an interface. So let's take a look at this thing. It's an interface with several methods, right? @admin, @author, @is_author_admin, as Discord environment, and send message. So essentially, the purpose of this thing is to describe an environment within which the command is running. And right now we have only two environments within which the command can run: Twitch environment and Discord environment, right? So and essentially, if you call send message, it will send message to the environment where the command was issued, right? So the command itself doesn't really care much about the environment it's running in. Right. So if it wants to just send a response, it doesn't need to know where it's sending the response, right? Whether it's Twitch, whether it's Discord, it doesn't care. It just want to send it, and that's what it is. It just abstracts that away. And add admin, basically an add author. Also, depending on the environment, is going to return different thing, because on different environments, on Twitch you add people one way, on Discord you add people the other way. Right, and because of the difference in the environment, it's also abstracted away. And at admin is needed in case of, for example, an error has happened, and I need to ping the admin so to check logs or something like that. So this is how it's usually used. I think we can even check it out. Yeah. So for example, if an error has happened, I just say something went wrong with the database, commands that require it won't work, please ask admin to check the logs. Right, so it is needed to send these kind of messages in case something failed, right? So, yes. And here, when we handle the command, we have a huge switch case. Speaking of hard-coding things, right? So, for instance, I just hard-coded 2 commands for 2 different projects that I'm working on, right? Dat, which is the text editor, dramatic text editor that we worked on the previous stream, right? And also for the Gatekeeper, I just edited it right here, and it's literally hard-coded in the code. It is literally hard-coded in the code, and like different commands may do different things and stuff like that. So what I want to do, I want to unhard-code that shit. Right, I just want to add hard code. Like every time I want to add a new command that describes one of my projects, I don't want to go and modify the goddamn source code. Right, I don't want to go and modify the source code. So essentially what I can do, I can just create a new table in a database where it's going to be a command and 2 columns, like a name of the command and the response, right? So, and instead of like doing this shit, I will just like a query. Okay, the user sent this command, tell me the response for this command, and I just grab it from the database and I just put it there. And every time I want to add a new command, I will just modify the database and don't have to even restart the bot, don't even have to recompile anything, it will just work. Right, but here lies the problem. It works well for the commands that just respond with a text, right? So essentially, because you have a mapping, name of the command, text response, like a static text response. Name of the command, static text response. But that means that all of my commands all of a sudden split into 2 different categories. The custom commands, static custom commands that are in the database, and dynamic commands that are built in. For example, I have commands that check the weather. Right, and to check the weather, I literally have to make an HTTP query. Right, so, and that cannot be stored in a database. Right, so that like effectively splits all of your commands into 2 categories: static commands and dynamic commands. And you cannot store dynamic commands in a database, and that's a huge problem. Right, so the way it's usually solved. It's usually solved in dynamic languages, right? So if you're writing your code in something like JavaScript, right, so essentially what you can do, instead of storing the text of the response of the command, you literally store the JavaScript that you're going to evaluate. And as far as I know, Supinic does like that, right, for his bot. So essentially in his database, he has like mapping of the name of the command and literally JavaScript that is evaluated every time you run this command. And that is very flexible and that works. But at the same time, it's just like a little bit scary, at least for me, right? Because you like literally have the whole power of the JavaScript. And what if that specific JavaScript is gonna do something that it's not supposed to do in a global environment or something like that, right? So that's kind of a little bit scary, but I mean, Supinic is a professional JavaScript developer. He probably knows what he's doing. Maybe in JavaScript there's something like that, something that actually like sort of sandbox the environment and stuff like that. But I'm not a professional JavaScript developer, and I'm also not using JavaScript, right? So what kind of solution can fit our case, where we're using statically typed compiled language, but also want to have these dynamic, benefits, these dynamic benefits of actually storing this script in the database? We can use the secondary scripting language, actually, something like Lua, right? Something like Lua, where like we store the Lua code in the database, and then we evaluate this this entire thing. But Lua is like a huge separate dependency, right? So we don't really need the entire Lua just to, you know, just evaluate some commands and even like compose some effects of the bot. And here comes the solution. Chat says huge. I mean, it's relatively huge. It's relatively huge to the problem I'm trying to solve. Right, so everything is relative. I thought about this problem for quite some time, right? And some time ago, I came up with plausible solution. Basically, make your own simple scripting language, right? I can, and then you can say, oh, making your language is so hard, blah, blah, blah. But no. So if you analyze precisely what do you need, right, and implement exactly what you need, it's not going to be that hard, and it's not going to be that big, and it's going to be smaller than Lua. Right. So the scripting language I came up with, I actually streamed the development of that language. I think it's located on GitLab. Somewhere GitLab. Sorry. Yeah, so basically domain-specific language. It already exists. I already made it in Go, by the way. It's called Bex. What it stands for? It's just a sec. Oh, it's a bot expression. Why did they fucking call it like that? Bex. Right. So let me give you the link to the source code of Bex. What the fuck is wrong with me? When I developed that, I developed it like I developed it a year ago, right? So it was a year ago. A year ago, I was actually thinking how to solve this this kind of stuff. All right, Bex. So, and this is the bot expression, and the language consists of only 4 things. Only 4 things: strings, integers, variables, and function calls. That's it. That's literally, that's the entire language. You want to see the size of the language, like how much code do you need to write to implement this language. So let's actually go down. 433 lines of code. And the thing is, essentially, what you do, right? You can write these kind of expressions, right? You can write these kind of expressions, and then in the environment, in the scope of the evaluation of that language, you can bind your own custom variables and your own custom functions. And when you call these own custom functions, they will call the Go functions, right? So you basically provide a table, like here's the name, and here's what this function does. And while evaluating the script, it will literally call that function. And essentially, if you have commands that perform some side effects, you can basically put all of these side effects into separate functions. For instance, you can define function say, which accepts a string. And every time this function is evaluated, the bot will say something, say that text within the environment. Right, it will say that text within the environment. So, for example, we have a command weather, which need to perform HTTP query to get the weather, and then it prints that weather. Right, so to get HTTP query, you can literally create a separate command called HTTP. Right, and for instance, you want to now define a weather command. How would you define a weather command? Well, you define it as an expression that takes HTTP query of. So let's actually find the check weather off. Right, check weather off, something like that. Right, this. Then you would provide the location of the weather through the arguments. So you would put arg in here, and then you would also add this thing in here. Right, and this command, or this function, will perform the HTTP query and just return, as a result, the text that was returned by this thing. So this thing needs to be URL escaped. Let's also have a separate function URL escape, right, which basically just URL escapes this entire stuff, URL escape, right. And then what you want to do, you want to say to the user whatever we got from this entire thing. So we will do say HTTP. But we also want to add the author of the message. So we can say something like @author, right? And maybe we're gonna separate all of that with a space, like so, right? And this is a single string. This is a single string that we can save in a database, right? So we can have a name, table name, and then behavior, and this is what we can store in a database. So, and every time you like issue a weather command, right? Every time you issue a weather command, we're gonna query this specific behavior, and we're gonna evaluate it with an interpreter, right? And for these kind of functions, it will call back to Go code, which will perform HTTP queries, URL encoding, and then saying it, and then it will just behave as this description, right? So, and as you can see, for these kind of simple things, you don't need an entire Lua. You just like need a simple expression language, and then we can say basic building. We can take all of the building blocks of the bot behavior, like saying a message, making HTTP query, maybe extracting something from the database, and we can expose that to the admins of the bot to basically compose different commands. So we basically, instead of having commands, we have building blocks out of which you can build your own commands, right? So does it make sense? Does Bex have telemetry? Yes, it does have telemetry. I'm joking, it doesn't. And all of that, this entire thing is in fact like only requires you to add 400 lines of code, right? So it only requires you to add 400 lines of code, and 33. As far as I know, like a huge part of it is an example, right, that demonstrates how to use all of that. In reality, I think the language itself is actually 231 lines of code, right? So because the rest of it is just like a main function that just demonstrates how to use this entire thing. So in here, we have eval expression, which just recursively evaluates this entire thing. And here is just like a scope management, right? So this is some sort of a scope management. I wrote it like a long time ago, but I don't remember everything. So here we can parse the expression. And this is, I suppose, the expression parser. It's very simple. It doesn't support string escaping, but it's really easy to add in future. Right, and yeah, so this is the definition of the structures and stuff like that. So that's the entire language. Isn't that cool? So you get the like advantage of scripting language for just 200 lines of code. It's that simple. It's probably not super fast, in the sense that every time you execute a command, you parse the command, parse the source code, and then evaluate it. And the evaluator is not even like it compiles to a virtual machine. It's literally just traverses the AST and evaluates that. But for simple things, I think it's actually sufficient enough. Cache it in memory, yeah, maybe. It would be kind of cool to even like invent a virtual machine for this entire thing and compile this stuff to bytecode and actually store the bytecode in a database. So every time you query the command, you don't parse what you've got from the database, you just start evaluating bytecode directly without parsing, right? And maybe, so if your bot is like working with millions of users, we can JIT compile this command to native code. That's actually very cool. That's a very interesting project, like compile, like JIT compiler for Bex. JIT compiler for Bex, right? So it takes the bytecode for its virtual machine and maps it to the actual native instructions. And every time you execute the code, you jump to the sequence of native instructions. It does sound like over-engineering, and we're probably not going to do it today or probably in the near future. But if I was developing like a production bot, like a heavy load production bot, and I wanted to implement feature like that for that heavy load production bot with like millions of users and millions of requests like per second or something like that, that would have been an interesting project to work on, right? Imagine you need to have that, but like on a high load, right? And what you essentially do, you implement like an in-memory compiler for your commands. That's such an interesting project to work on. But it's, of course, we're not going to do that probably in the near future, but just like, you know, have that at the back of the head. I think it's kind of cool still. Right. So I'm saying all of that is that this is a very dumb solution. But then if you need to like scale it in terms of performance, it scales also somewhere in some place, theoretically, right? Probably, hopefully not in a bad place. I don't know. Right. So isn't that poggers, my dudes? Alright, so we've got some sub. MateYourself777, thank you so much for tier 1 subscription with the message Tsodin Gun? I almost said gopher. As far as I can remember, this emote is called Tsodin Gun, yeah. And Apocryphos, thank you so much for tier 1 subscription with the message Pew Pew. Right. Just a friendly reminder that you can actually put anything in the message of your resub, right, including questions and even programming questions. And since you put some money into a question, I will have like a moral obligation to at least answer something to you. I won't be able to dismiss your question or pretend like I ignored you, right? Like I didn't notice you, right? So if you put something there, I sort of like morally forced to answer something to you. Even though I don't get money, I just feel bad if I don't acknowledge the like the people who have good intentions and trying to give me money. Can you use it as a debugger? The debugging what? Debugger of what? Debugger of its own scripts? I don't think so. I think to debug this kind of scripts, we probably need to create a separate tool. But since the script is so simple, the debugging tool is probably gonna also super simple. So I don't think it's necessary. Can I use you as a debugger? Oh my god, I'm sorry. I can't read. No, you can't use me as a debugger. But I mean, if you ask a debugging question in the resubscription, we'll see. All right. So let's go. Let's actually take a look at this thing, right? So let's actually try to run it on my machine, because I haven't run it for quite some time. So maybe I do have it still somewhere here. So Bex, do I have Bex in here? I do have Bex. Would you look at that? Right. So can I just, you know, download everything? So, oh yeah, I've made some changes, right? Turn, oh yeah, I do remember that. Turn Bex into a scapt scheme. Yeah, I remember that what I did, I actually implemented like a lot of different built-in functions. That's probably why the main thing is so huge, right? So you have place, you have let. I implemented let. And so what did we do in let apart from that? Define, which defines new function. By the way, who said that you can't define a function that while executes adds another function to the scope of the script? So you can have a function that defines other functions, right? You can do that. So you have lists, you have for, like I defined all of these things, and this is what I came up with. So yeah, function hello. The arguments of the function are name and the city, right? And then when you execute this function, we say hello name from city, and then we query the weather. We query weather in your place, in your city, and we tell you that here is your weather in blah blah blah. Right, and then this is not part of the language, by the way. This is what you can do with this language. You can define all of these constructions as separate functions, right? But here's the interesting thing. So, like, how can you do a define? Doesn't that mean that all of this thing is going to be executed before this function is going to be defined? Not really. So the way the Bex is executed, and this is a feature of the Bex itself, it's all call by value, right? Do you guys know what is a call by value? Call by, not by value, by name. It's a call by name. I'm sorry. It's like a computer science term, right? That yeah, it's one of the evaluation strategies, right? It's one of the evaluation strategies. So the idea is basically, right? The idea is basically that when you call a function like f, and you do something like 1 plus 2. 1 plus 2 is not evaluated. 1 plus 2 is not evaluated. It's passed as an expression, unevaluated expression, inside of f. Right? It's sort of like, it's lazy in a Haskell sense, lazy. So essentially, we start evaluating at the outermost function. So this function evaluates first, and it gets all of its arguments as unevaluated expressions. And then within the implementation of the function itself decides whether it wants to evaluate functions or doesn't want to evaluate functions. And that way it can actually work as a defined construction, because it's not going to evaluate all of these things, it's just going to save them. Right, so essentially here, hello, it probably evaluates these two arguments, right? But then it just takes whatever it has afterwards and just adds all of that as a new function in the scope or something like that, right? And this is very useful. This is very useful. For example, you can define a function something like subbed, right? For instance, you have a command with this specific expression, right? With this specific expression, and sub takes its own argument, doesn't evaluate that argument, but the first thing it does, it checks whether you subbed or not. And if you subbed, only then it will evaluate the inner thing. And if you not subbed, it will tell you, no, this feature is only for sub people. Right, right. It all may be only mods, right? So this is a similar thing. So this is why we call by name, right? This is why we do not evaluate the arguments. We just pass them as this. So the implementation of the function can decide itself whether it wants to evaluate these things or not, right? Because it allows to create this kind of guards and check different things and stuff like that. I think it's rather useful. Right. So for this specific language, this is an advantage of using your own language for this kind of stuff, by the way, because you can decide how it behaves. Right. If you go with Lua, you're stuck with whatever Lua offers you, and you can't change that unless you start modifying Lua. But now you're actually, maintaining Lua. Right. So you can develop a language precisely for your use case. So the arguments are strings all the time. No, they're AST nodes. You literally pass them as AST nodes. Right, so for instance, let me see how HTTP is defined. Right, so HTTP is defined as so. Right, so when HTTP command is executed, we actually call this go function, right, which accepts evaluation context, right, and it also gets the array of the arguments of the expressions. And as you can see, all of the arguments, they are expressions. And expression, we can take a look at what is an expression. It's a structure, it's an AST. So you can check its type, right? So it's either integer, string, variable, function call. We also have void for whatever reason. And depending on what it is, you can actually cast it to either integer, string, or something like that. Right, so, and essentially, right, so what we do, we iterate, specifically for HTTP command, HTTP commands needs to evaluate its arguments. So what it does, it iterates through the arguments and it asks the context to evaluate each individual argument. So you see, the function itself made a conscious decision. Okay, I want this argument to be evaluated, right? So, and that's how it works. For example, in something like define, right, or maybe for, and maybe not for. Where is define? Right, so here we accept arguments, but the first thing we do in here, we check the length of the arguments without even evaluating them. Right, we don't even evaluate the arguments, they're just a list of trees for us. Right, and we're only going to evaluate things that are needed to be evaluated depending on what function does. Right, if for example I want to introduce an if construction is going to be something like condition, then, and else, right? So, and essentially, if is going to evaluate condition up front, but it's not going to evaluate then or else. Then it's going to check, and then if the condition is true, it's going to evaluate then, and if it's false, it's going to evaluate else. Right? So you see what I mean? So that's precisely why it is called by name, right? So the functions themselves decide what kind of construction they act as. Right, so that gives you more flexibility. And still, this language is 200 lines of code. Right, that's the cool part of it. You can do all this cool shit and it's 200 lines of code. And to be fair, it's a very specialized language. It is a very specialized language. It's only good as a language that describes the behavior of the bot commands. Right, and honestly, I do not recommend to write in this language like that. I do not recommend. This was just a demo what you can do with this language, but generally what you would do, you would identify the building blocks of the behavior of your bot, like sending HTTP query, saying something in the chat, doing like making a specific Twitch API call, and you just expose them as these building blocks as functions, and then you can build command out of these blocks. Right. So if you try to turn it into real programming language, I feel like you're already doing something wrong. Right, if you turn it into real programming language, you probably need a real programming language. The whole point of this thing is that it's not a real programming language. It's just like a composition of predefined components. It's a glue code for predefined components. Does it make sense? Make sense? Let's go ahead and try to maybe run this thing. Right, so the problem with this thing is that it's not, how to say that, a separate package. But this entire thing is so small that I feel like there's no point in spending any effort on making it separate package, to be fair. Like, why? What's the point? Okay, so here we read lol Bex, then we parse all of the expressions, right? We parse all of the expressions, and then we evaluate all of the expressions. So one of the things we can do, let's actually try to recompile this entire thing. So I'm gonna do go build dot. Oh yeah, it was actually developed with such an old Go that it didn't use the Go mod thing. I think you can easily bypass that if you just provide the file name. Right. My Go was so old it didn't even spy on me to Google. Right. Right. If I try to do something like Bex, right, unknown function mod, it doesn't know about function mod, right? So the program tried to call mod, and I don't see. Oh, I just added that thing in there. So remember how I was like confabulating functions, like possible functions that you can define? I just added it there, and the environment told me that this thing does not exist. Right. So there we go. It worked. You saw how it actually paused for a second. This is because it literally was making an HTTP query. Right. It's literally making an HTTP query. Right. So it works. It's just it's a very basic and simple glue. It's a very basic and simple glue that we can use in our project. I wonder what else can we do, for instance. I want to try some things. So let me do a new main in here. So this is going to be just a main. FMT println, and I'm going to say hello world. Hello world. And we're going to do go run Bex go. Hello world. Okay, cool. So let's actually define something. Let's define a command, something like say. You probably have to put quotes in here. Hello world. Right. So this is my source. Right. So this is my source. And what can I do with that source? How can I parse that? So there is parse all expressions, right? So parse all expression, it accepts the string and returns a sequence of expressions or an error if there was, a syntax error in there, right? So that makes sense. That's pretty cool. So parse all expressions, source, and we get expressions or an error, right? Something like that. If error not equal, we're gonna say fmt println error. I could not. What the fuck am I doing? Could not parse source code for this specific reason, and then we're gonna maybe exit with non-zero exit code, right? So this is how you exit with non-zero exit code. Otherwise, we can try to maybe print the literal AST that we managed to parse, right? So let's actually take a look at that. So println, and I'm gonna literally just try to print this thing. So did we get anything? Undefined OS. Okay, so we probably have to import this OS. Sure, there we go. Yeah, that's basically the AST, but it would be nicer if we had like a better ready printer for this kind of stuff. I remember that you have to do some shit like this, right? I don't quite remember. It's just like hash or plus or something like that. Yeah. So essentially type 4, it doesn't really specify like the name of an actual enumeration, but as an integer it has nothing, as a string it has nothing, it only has as a function, right? So this is literally a function, and that is kind of strange, right, isn't it? Right, because we have only one single expression, which is a function call, right? And as a function call, it has a pointer to the string, maybe, right? So if I take a look as fun call, yeah, it is a pointer, right? It is a pointer, and the reason it is a pointer is because we have like a sequence of arguments and stuff like that. It didn't really do like a deep, you know, how to say that, deep traversal to show everything in that AST, right? It would be nice to have like a maybe a thing that allows us to print. You can actually print this expression back, but it actually recovers the original expression here, which is not particularly great. So you can literally just do something like s, and it just restores this entire thing. It actually doesn't, which is kind of weird, because I mean you could do string. Isn't that how it works? Or do you have to explicitly say string? Ah, because we have several of them. Okay, so if I do something like for expr range, I think it's something like I expers, right? So then it's going to be I, and that should actually work, right? Because we have a string method for this entire thing. Yeah, there we go. I'm not sure why it is like that. So yeah, okay, so you have to call string explicitly. For some reason I thought that asQuantifier will automatically call the string method for me, but it doesn't call it for me, right? So if I just remove it, it doesn't do that, which is kind of weird. Like I thought it does that automatically. I contains as an element itself. Let's actually find out. Does it contain as an element itself? No, it doesn't. Somebody doesn't know Go. All right. So what I wanted to have, like some sort of a tool that actually dumps the AST, if you know what I mean, right? So essentially, it will just like print this entire thing or whatnot. So let me see. So how can I call a method? Right. So essentially, I want to have a method, expr, which dumps the AST. We can literally call it dump, right? Right, we can literally call it dump, and I suppose it's going to just like log this entire thing. So, and depending on the type, we're gonna just like print this entire thing differently. So we have a bunch of other types, right? Expression void, but let's actually use a little bit of a Emacs magic for this entire scheiße. Okay, so I'm gonna put it here, case, and cool. So in case of void, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna literally print void, right? So this is a void. Another interesting thing. So I want to actually print it as in a YAML style, if you know what I mean, right? So for instance, if I have something like say hello world, right? The output that I want to see fun call, right? Fun call name say args, right? So args, and then for each arg it's gonna be like for instance string, right? String value and so on and so forth. I want to actually see the structure, the tree structure of the entire AST. I think it's going to be useful. Maybe it could be done like this, right? So maybe fun call, and then in here you have like other things, and also it needs to maintain the indentation, right? So because of that, we need to keep track of the level, right, at which we are. And as far as I know, Go doesn't have default arguments, does it? Right, so it doesn't have them. Golang default arguments, right? So I'm pretty sure Rockpipe came up with a very highly intelligent reason for having or not having this entire thing that you would never guess unless you read his actual argument, right? But maybe it does exist, I don't know. So benefits of having named returned. What? DuckDuckGo. What about Google? I swear to God. Optional parameters. Okay, so they're called optional parameters. Sure. So Go does not have optional because it's not idiomatic and because I said so. Okay, so I don't care the reason. So it doesn't have them. Sure. So this is something that we have to just keep in mind. All right, so that's fine. Let's do fmt. So we're gonna just like call this entire thing as export dump 0 then, right? So, but then maybe we can implement some sort of a wrapper, right, that just passes that 0. But it's just like, you know, the style thingy, more of like a style thingy. So what we can do in here is essentially just for, I don't know, how can you do a range, or can you do a range, or maybe I have to actually do it like that, level plus apply. There's no plus plus because Rob Pike said so. There's no actual reason, it's just because he said so. And then we probably want to just do like maybe 1 space, maybe 2 spaces. Okay, sure, something like that, whatever. Maybe there is like a magic for like in a format parameters that can actually allow me to do that, but I'm a little bit lazy to figure that out. All right, so fmt print f. So here we're gonna have an integer, right? So an integer, and I want to actually print the value of the integer, right? So it's gonna be expression as int, So in here I probably have to put a new line. So for the consistency, I want to use printf in here, right? So I think that's cool. Printf, and then we have str, which is going to be a string expression as str. And for a string, I have to wrap it in quotes, but there's one problem is that it would be nice to escape this entire thing as well. So expression dump does not escape strings, right? So this is something that we want to have as well. Printf, we also need var, right? So this is going to be a var, and expression as var. There we go. So all of these things were rather simple, right? So all of them were rather simple. So the difficulty comes with a fun call, right? So we're going to do in here, we're going to just do fun call. And in the fun call, what do we have? If I remember correctly, expression as fun call, right? So it's a very fun call. We're having fun, chat. Aren't you having fun? I'm having such a fucking fun call. All right. So it has a name, right? So here's the name. And after that, we want to iterate the arguments, right? So we're going to be iterating the arguments, and we're going to call in that thing recursively. Right. So this is going to be a range expression as fun call args, right? And then what do we want to do? We want to do, maybe it would be better to actually do something like that. I can never remember, like if I add another argument in here, is the actual element on the right side or on the left side? I can never, for some reason, remember. The order is just like not obvious to me. So my brain cannot comprehend it. So I always get it wrong, like every time, but maybe it doesn't matter, right? So I'm gonna just like put it like this. The compiler will tell me that I'm doing something wrong, and then I will change it, and then I will never learn what's the actual order. So that's how it usually goes, right? Right, so because I feel like it doesn't fucking matter. It's just like I literally couldn't care less in which order you actually put these things. But I'm pretty sure there is like a highly philosophical reason, and Rob Pike really thought out the actual order, right? So, and you have to remember that. Anyway, but I personally, I'm such a bad programmer, I couldn't care less. Like I couldn't give a shit. I just want my code to work. All right, so let's see. No declaration inside of body. Okay, so we don't need that stuff anymore. Dump is undefined, which is rather interesting, right? So, and it is undefined for integers. Who would have guessed? I got the order wrong. Okay. That's cool. So now what I want to do, is basically just do these things. So expression, so arg, so it comes first. So maybe I'm gonna do arg. Maybe I'm gonna call it expert actually. Expert Emacs. Freaking stop. Dump. Okay, finally. Are we good? Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Look at that AST dump. Look at that beautiful, beautiful AST dump. Isn't that poggers? I think it's pretty fucking poggers. So let's actually try to dump something more complicated. For instance, the example that we had in here. Like, what if we try to dump this shit? I think it's gonna be really fucking poggers. So it's gonna be huge AST. So in here, we just want to read the file, right? So we already use a read file, and then we parse all of the expressions, right? So let's go, so this is going to be that, and we can say that source is basically a string of content, because as far as I know, read file returns an array of bytes, right? So it returns an array of bytes. Go doc, right? Yes, it does return an array of bytes. Cool. So let's go ahead and just try to execute this entire thing, and let's admire this entire AST. Right. So if we want to debug our code, we can see its entire structure in here. So this is a function called define, and the arguments are variable, another function call, and so on and so forth. Right. That's actually pretty cool. It's not even that big, but yeah. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, I think it's useful. It's useful to have this kind of thing, and I want to actually add that stuff to the original repo, to the original Bex repo. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just add this function call. I'm not gonna add this thing for testing. Right, so let's say implement exper dump, right, and I'm gonna push that right into the repo. I'm gonna push that right into the repo. Is it pushed? Is it pushed? I think it is finally pushed. Okay, the reason I was doing all of that is because I want you to kind of recall how to work with this language, because I haven't used it for a year, right? So this is me using it for the first time after a year. I can't really remember everything in this code, but I now recall the gist of how you're supposed to work with this entire thing. And as you can see, it's pretty straightforward, right? So it's easy to parse, it's easy to traverse, it's easy to modify. It's just like 200 lines of code. Right, let's go ahead and just try to put this thing in the source code of the bot. So so where is the bot? So then Gatekeeper. So, and it's gonna be CMD Gatekeeper. How are we gonna go about all of that? I think I'm gonna literally just copy paste Bex there. Right, so again, I don't really want to mess with the packages and stuff like that. Right, I'm gonna just literally copy paste the code into the project, because you know what they say. The actually reusable code is the one that you can simply copy paste. They don't actually say that. I made that up. I'm the only one who say that, but I'd like to say that. But it's actually true. Right, the most reusable code is the one that you can simply take and freaking reuse. Right. So you take the code, you put it in your project, you just reuse it. That's the most reusable code. That it's as reusable as you can get. You can't get more reusable than this. That's the pinnacle of reusability, right? You don't need some dependency injection, abstract factories, or any fucking bullshit. You take the code, you just fucking reuse it. That's the reusable code. Literally, without any freaking bullshit. Cheers for that. Reusable code is the lie that made up by NPM incorporation. Yes, exactly. Okay, so I removed main, right? So I didn't think we need that stuff anymore. Okay. You know what I don't like about this code? Is that it freaking panics a lot. It's a very panicky code. It is a very panicky code. So here we just check for unreachable. Well, for this one, I think it is okay to panic, right? Because I want to make sure that this switch case is complete. Is there any way to ask the Go compiler to check that this switch case is complete? Right. So I'm pretty sure there should be some way. Golang switch case complete. Because I don't want this to be a runtime error. You know what I'm talking about? How to write switch statements in Go. Check if complete. Can anybody ask ChatGPT, please? I don't have an access to it. Okay, so anyways. Exhaustive. Okay, so let's try Exhaustive. Thank you so much. That's a better name. Exhaustive. I completely forgot about such a fancy a package. You need a separate package for that, everyone. Command line program. It's a separate linter to check the exhaustiveness of your switch cases. Oh, nice language, by the way. And on top of that, this language is gonna send all of your data to Google. Yes, nice language. The feature is only available if you install Telemetry in Go. Yeah. They actually should do something like that. Yo, what the fuck? That's such a cool idea. Basically, introduce new features to the language. They should have actually only allowed generics in Go if you enable Telemetry. Yo. Ah, that's such a cool idea. I absolutely love it. Anyway, so essentially the only way right now we can check exhaustiveness is by, like, at runtime, right, I suppose. So it will be nice to panic here as well. Right, so generally, like, in this specific application, I don't think panicking is a good idea because this application is supposed to work 24/7, right? It's not supposed to even fail. If any error has happened, it should handle that, log that, and continue working for as long as possible because it's a service, right? So that's how a service should operate, right? But in case of exhaustive switch cases, this is an error that should have been caught at compile time. I think in that case, panicking here is a good idea because it will force you to fix it as quickly as possible, right? Ideally, I should not have this thing in here. Ideally, it's something that should have been checked at compile time, but we're programming in Go. We all make mistakes. We all make oopsie doopsie and fucky wacky. So it is what it is sometimes, and it isn't what it isn't. Ooh. All right, so let's take a look at other cases of panic. No scope found. Okay. So interestingly, so we have a top scope. I just realized that scope is a thing that I introduced. Specifically, I can create a define function, right? Specifically, I can create a define function. So variables and functions. So I feel like that this is not particularly useful for me. So I feel like this is something that could be removed, by the way. Will it be available in a VOD? I'm started learning Go to... Yeah, it will be available in VOD, of course. I'm not going to remove that. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to upload it to YouTube, but I'm not going to remove it from Twitch either. Doesn't Go has no enums, thus it's not possible to check exhaustiveness. How is that contradicting to each other? Essentially, you have this kind of stuff. You can define a type for your enum, which is an alias. Well, it's actually a very strong alias as far as I know. And then you define constants, and if you specify this kind of type and iota, the consequent constants actually defined like enumerations, right? So you can roughly see the boundaries of a very specific enumeration. You can roughly see them. So the compiler can use this information to actually check exhaustiveness of the switch cases to some extent. You can come up with the rules that check the exhaustiveness. It's not an impossible computer science problem. I don't see it being an impossible computer science problem that requires PhD research. IOTA is a special syntax. Yeah. So essentially, it automatically increments the consequent constants to emulate the enumerations, C-style enumerations. Right. So here's the interesting thing. So this language apparently has a scope, and it has a scope in a like a stack, right? Because scope is a stack essentially, right? So, but I'm not sure if we need that actually, right? I'm really not sure if we need that. We have EvalContext, and we can look up the variable, right? We can look up the variable, and in all fairness, for this specific thing, we can simply just have one scope and never push it. Yeah, that's fair enough. That is fair enough. So here the top scope is needed to check what's defined there. This function is never fucking used, by the way. This function is never fucking used. So even when we look up a variable or a function, we just traverse them in the opposite order. So we can just remove that. Is that cool? That's how easy it is to get rid of the panics. You just like remove the entire function that contains the panic. Yeet. Easy, fucking easy. And here we have another unreachable, and which is yet another case of exhaustion of switch cases. Okay, so that means all of the panics in here, in my personal incompetent Go developer opinion, are justified. Right, so everything here is justified. Usually for this bot I don't like panics, but if it's just unreachable, that's fine. Okay, cool. Right, so this is package main. Do you have to specify package for each individual file? Yeah. Okay, let's try to compile this entire thing and see if it fails or not. So I'm gonna do cmd gatekeeper uvu, and we imported but not used IOUtil. Okay, and another one is net http. Cool, that's it. It's as easy as that. So Bex, let's actually put it this way, stolen from, and we're gonna put the original repo in here so people know like from where we'll take a look at. I'm actually curious, like where I was using top scope, what I was using top scope for, right? So I'm gonna go to back to Bex, top scope. That's very interesting. But this is, I see. So it was necessary specifically for like to access like the top scope, because if I define a new variable, I add that variable to the top of the scope, to the nearest scope possible. So it's only needed when you really want to define all of these like real language constructions like let, define, and stuff like that. Right. Hello, Tsoding. Is Google really spying on you? Yes. Do you see the language I'm programming in? Have you heard about telemetry in Go? Have you heard about telemetry in Go? Like, I'm gonna give you the link, by the way. So the Go has a telemetry. So it sends all of the data, all of your data to Google so they can target their ads better at you. So yeah, telemetry in Go. That's the first ever programming language with the compiler with telemetry. Maybe not the first one, but I mean, yeah. So Google is literally spying on you as you program in Go. Oh wait, Go toolchain really has telemetry? I don't really know actually. So I think they actually postponed that idea. But the fact that they even entertained that idea is extremely concerning to me, to be fair. And the title is more of like a joke and poking fun at them. I don't think they implemented that yet, because the people really expressed disagreement with this kind of decision, so I don't think they're gonna push it right away. But I'm pretty sure they're gonna attempt like several times to push that, because they really want that. They fucking want that. They have like a whole blog post and stuff like that, and you can feel they really want your data. They fucking really want your data. Please give us your data. Oh my fucking god. I wanna see all of the projects you're building. Yes. So I can better target my development tools to you. Please give me all of your data. Yes. Anyways, so we've got some sub. We've got some sub from Alindra Braga. Thank you so much for 28 months of tier 1 subscription with the message. Thank you for all the awesome content. Thank you for all awesome money. Thank you. Anyways, let's continue sending data to Google. How are we gonna actually approach this entire stuff? So I need a context, right? So I essentially need a context, but where do I store that context? So if I go to the command, right, so this is the command, and I eval the command. So in here, I accept the database, right? I accept the database, I accept the command, and a command environment, like an environment in which I execute that command. Another thing I need to accept in here is, you know, eval environment, right? So, so I already use env as a name in here, right? So maybe I should do something like eval env, eval context. Okay, let's go with the context to make it even more confusing. You have an environment and you have a context. How about that? Isn't that cool? By the way, eval context, if we completely switch to using the Bex expressions for defining the behavior of the command, eval context may potentially replace the command environment, right? Because how do you send a message? How do you send a message in the Bex environment? You just say, say. Okay, so in my brain just merged together say and Bex, so don't add me, okay? Say hello, right? And essentially, depending on the environment in which you run this command, the say implementation is going to be different, which is basically what command environment is used for. So maybe this will allow us to get rid of this kind of stuff. Just saying, maybe it will allow us to get rid of this entire thing. I think that's kind of cool. So, all right, so let's actually continue implementation after a small break, because I already streamed for an hour and I need to make a cup of tea. All right, so let's go ahead and try to compile that code. So essentially, I changed the signature of this function, so it's used in a couple of places, literally in a couple. So it's probably used in the Discord transport, right? So when you send a command in a Discord, and in a Twitch transport when you send a command in Twitch. So I expect both of these places to break when I try to compile this entire thing. I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna try to see what we can do there. Gatekeeper, show me. It's actually 4 places. That's very interesting. Yeah, the first one, not enough arguments to call. Oh, because we call this stuff recursively within eval commands. Okay, so I can actually pass the context there as well. Right, so Cyrilify environment. Oh yeah, that's actually very cool. So we have a command called Cyril, right? Which essentially Cyrilifies your message. You can do Cyril, hello comrades, right? And it literally just like turns this message into Cyrillic, right? So yeah, it literally translates it to Russian. This is how you say that message in Russian. Yes, this is Russian. Yes. That's how we speak. We just take English and we just put additional features on the Latin alphabet, and that's literally Russian, right? It's just an American language, but with the fancy alphabet. Have fun. Anyway. So what else do we have in here? So another one. another one. All right, so, and let's go to here. So this is what handles when we send a command in a Discord, right? So there's a handle Discord message. We parse the command. If we couldn't parse the command, what we do, we just feed the message to Carrotson. Carrotson, yeah. Carrotson is a state-of-the-art artificial intelligence. And if the message cannot be parsed to the command, we give that message to this artificial intelligence to train and become conscious, right? That's what it is. That's literally what it means. It's artificial intelligence. I'm joking. This is actually Markov chain. So, it's not really that intelligent. It's actually kind of dumb, right? So it listens to all of your messages and it adds it to like a huge Markov chain. So it then can later generate different messages based on whatever you said. I think I disabled that for Twitch. Right, so I think I disabled it for Twitch, but for Discord, it actually trains the Markov chain on people's messages. So what we're doing here, we just eval command, right, with database and command and the Discord environment. So the thing we need to do, we probably need to construct the eval environment, eval context, right? So, and it seems relatively easy to do because it's just a bunch of scopes, right? So it's just a bunch of scopes, and this is probably what I have to do in here. I'm going to do eval context. And that's it. So we're gonna use an empty eval context, and I think that should be sufficient. Right, so it's not a pointer, and this is probably because in here, I do not accept this entire thing by a pointer. But why do I put this as a pointer? Ah, this is because it's an interface. Yeah. That explains it. So I don't need any of that scheisse in there. All right, so the same thing needs to be done for the Twitch environment, right? So that makes sense. Command environment. So this is a command environment. Not command environment, what am I talking about? Eval context, right? So this is eval context, no pointer, and there we go. So everything seems to be compiling. So essentially now we need to try to evaluate something. For instance, I want to take these hard-coded commands, right? I want to take all of these hard-coded commands and I want to turn them into the like a Bex expressions, right? So that's what I want to turn them into. So here what we have at author. So maybe in a Bex environment, I'm going to put comments in here. In the Bex environment, we're going to have a variable author, which points at the current author of the message, right? It's a current author. And furthermore, it's going to be formatted in the way that can be just put in the message, and it will actually add that author. Depending on the environment, you add different people differently. Like on Twitch, you put add. On Discord, you actually have to use a special syntax, which includes the ID of the author or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? So yeah. And essentially we're going to have author. So concatenation of the string is going to be done through the arguments of the functions. For instance, I'm going to do say author, comma, and then basically this entire message. Right. So literally this entire message, I can put it in here. And then if I evaluate this entire thing within that specific context, it should produce like a similar result. Right. But I will have to implement a variable author and a function say. Right, so let's actually introduce something like a variable called source, right? So this is a source. Maybe let's call it Bex, right? So kind of like that. But we need to escape some of these things in here, right? So we're escaping this thing in here, and here is the Bex of that specific command. The first thing we need to do, right? The first thing we need to do, we need to parse that command. Parse. So we have parse all expressions, if I'm not mistaken. Parse all expressions. And it literally parses all of the expressions, but can it parse only one expression in here? So parse one expression, and it needs to be converted to runes and blah blah blah. Okay, so I think we need to use parse all expressions. All right, so we need to parse all expressions. But here's an interesting thing. That means you can have several expressions in here, right? So because a single string may contain several expressions. Right. it may contain several expressions. So this is experts, and we're gonna have an error in here. We're gonna have an error. And how are we gonna be handling all of that, by the way? How are we gonna be handling all of that? I suppose if the command in a database, because we're gonna store this string in a database, if the command in the database contains several commands, we can just evaluate them in sequence, right? We can just evaluate them in a sequence, which is kind of cool, because it could be a sequence of several things. Maybe the command will say hello world, but hello and world are going to be two different separate messages, and it's going to be like say hello and say world, right? So literally Bex is going to be something in a database, say hello. I probably need to add support for single quotes, will be kind of cool. And then say hello world. I put single quotes in here because I didn't want to quote them inside of the double quotes. You see what I mean? And if we store something like that in a database, it will literally send two separate messages, right? So we can kind of like program the behavior of command in this simple scripting language, right, so to speak, right? Because of that, it should be relatively straightforward to just do, iterate through all the expressions and just evaluate them, right? Okay, so this is going to be range experts, and we need to evaluate them. The question is, how do we evaluate them? Eval, it should be a function, I'm pretty sure. Should be a function, eval context, push context, eval expression. Okay, so you call to the context and you evaluate the expression and you get the result. That's what's interesting. You get the result of that set expression. Okay, that's pretty cool. Expression, context, right? So this is the context, eval expression, and we provide the expression, right? So we provide the expression, and evaluation may actually fail because of that, right? So it may also return an error. So this is going to be a result, and this is an error, right? So by the way, parsing this entire thing may also fail, right? It may also fail, which raises the question, how are we going to be reporting all of that? And what is the possible errors that we can get while parsing this entire thing? Right, so let me see. So what do we usually report? So we sometimes say expected, but we don't really say where. Usually they're relatively safe to report to the user, I think. Yeah. I think all of these errors are relatively safe to report to the user, like unknown variable, unknown function. So because I'm thinking, should I set that in a public chat, or should I log it locally so people can see that? I think it's relatively safe to actually like say them in the chat, right? It's going to be easier to debug that, right? So if we can't do that, yeah, so that's pretty straightforward. Okay, if error not equal nil, we can just like literally say environment send message. We're gonna add the author, right? So environment add author, and we're gonna say something like could not parse the source code of the command, syntax error. Syntax error in, let's put syntax error. So I'm trying to make this thing less cryptic, but I think I'm gonna do that a little bit later. Command, because I want to make sure that the user of this command knows that it's an oopsie doopsie that mods did, not the user. Okay, so let's actually literally say that mods did an oopsie doopsie. Oopsie. Tell them that they have a syntax command, syntax error, and then we're gonna do error, something like that. So maybe if I just do it like that, will it work? Maybe not. Okay, and then we return out of that. Mods did an oopsie doopsie, tell them that they have a syntax error. All right, so in this case, if error not equal nil, right, what do we do? Environment send message Maybe yeah, it would be kind of nice to ping the mods, but we're gonna do that later. Doesn't matter. Add author mods did an oopsie doopsie. Tell them that they have. Tell them that they have an runtime error. That they got a runtime error. Right, plus error. Though I'm not sure. Okay. I'm gonna log the error because I think during the runtime can return arbitrary errors, and this is something that we generally do not want to show to the user. Right. I think generally we don't really want to show that to the user. You know what I mean? Right, because you in the definition of the function, right? When you define a custom function, you may throw a custom error which may contain sensitive information, right? I think it would be better to just generally log this kind of things and just ask the user, tell the mods to check this kind of stuff. Right, so it would be better to say mods did an oopsie doopsie while defining this command. Ask plus environment add admin, right, to check the logs, right, and then we're gonna log the error, right? So we're gonna say printf error while parsing dead command, right? So we can say something like dead command, and then we can simply provide an error. So I think new line in logging is not necessary because it automatically puts a new line in there anyway. Right, and we're gonna put error in here. There we go. So the same thing is gonna go in here, right? So mods did an oopsie doopsie while defining command. And we're gonna remove this one, and we're gonna log error while evaluating dead command, and there you go. So I'm copy pasting things around because in the future I'm going to compress all of that, so it doesn't really matter. So, and what's interesting is that after evaluating the command, you usually have a result, right? What we want to do with that result? I think in this specific case we can just ignore it, right? I don't think it is useful in any way, shape or form, right? It's not particularly useful in any way, shape or form. Okay, so let's try to compile this entire thing, right? To compile the bot and try to run the bot and see how it's gonna go. So it doesn't really compile because we have some stuff in here. So result is unused, but can I just say, okay, I'm not planning to use the result though. Right, I do not plan to use it. Can it use an expression? And yeah, this is because it's defined in a different order. All right, it's defined in a different order. And there we go. It seems to be compiling. It seems to be working. It seems to be working. Right. So I wanna try to run the bot, but I need to work with sensitive information. So I'm gonna actually just put this kind of thing. Look away. Working with credentials. Right, so don't look at the stream right now while I'm actually setting up the tokens and stuff like that. Just don't look at the screen, right? So because I don't want it to be leaked and then people will hack me, right? So that's very important. So don't look, okay? Okay, good. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna do something like that. And Yesu, kawai freaking desu. I think I already, where is my Gatekeeper? I can't find my folder with the Gatekeeper. I'm gonna rebuild the entire thing, just in case, super quick. And I'm gonna run the bot. So the problem with the bot is that we don't distinguish them. So I have a production bot and I have this local testing bot. So one of the things I probably need to do right now is set different prefixes for parsing. So here it uses exclamation mark or dollar for prefixing the command. I think in here I'm gonna actually replace this stuff with this thing. Right, I forgot it's just like a carrot roof thingy. I don't know. So I keep forgetting how it's called. Right, so let me try to rebuild this entire thing. It is rebuilding. And I started zbot. All right, so we can try to do ping. It's ponged, and when I do dead, circumflex, yes. And okay, so we have a first failure. So we've got a log with the message. That looks like this. Right in here. Error while evaluating dead commander. What did they say, commander? Commander! Okay. Who killed Captain Alex? Fuck. All right. So it says that we cannot evaluate the function say, right? Because in the original source code, we call to the function say. So first thing we need to do, we need to actually define that, right? So let's go ahead and define that specific function. So it has to be defined in a Twitch environment, right? So in evaluation context, we need to define the scope. Let me take a look at Bex. Right. So this is eval scope. So we have scopes. And in here, I'm gonna probably just create a new scope, like so. I wonder if I can just define something like this. I think I should be able to just do it like that. Will it infer everything that is necessary to infer in here? Right, so eval scope. Like, I don't remember, can I omit some of these things? Probably not, right? Anyway, then I need to define function funcs. And this is a map, if I'm not mistaken, right? So this is going to be a map string, right? Map string, and here we're gonna have say. But the question is, what is a function, right? So what kind of arguments does it accept? Right, what kind of arguments does it accept? Func. Is it defined anywhere? Type func. Yeah, okay. So it's a function that accepts the context, right? So it accepts itself. Context, eval context. And the arguments, right? So this is going to be expression, and then it returns the final expression, the result expression, or an error, right? And it returns a custom error. And this is precisely why I actually said that I don't want to log an error, because here you can actually return accidentally something sensitive, so you probably don't want to do that, right? So in here we're going to simply say through the environment, right? So depending on the environment, we say things differently. So we need a Twitch environment to actually say anything. So I suppose it would make sense to define an environment first in here, so then later we can refer back to this environment and say message, or maybe something. What's it called? I think it's called send message. Send message, and we literally just. So we're supposed to evaluate all the arguments in here. But we're not going to do it right now. We're going to just say hello from Bex. I'm going to put a smiley face in here. Right, and after that we can return something. And I suppose the reason why I introduced expression void is precisely so I can return nothing if I want to. Right, that's actually pretty cool. How can I construct a void? Oh, since void is 0, the default expression is actually void expression. This is so smart. What the fuck? So I can just return this and nil, and it's a valid expression. It's just like null. Yo, what the fuck? Cerimon, what's up? What's up? What's up? Hope you're doing well. Eval expert func, are you making to which lang? I'm making a scripting, small scripting language that describes the behavior of the bot commands. And in fact, I already made it. It already works. I'm just integrating it with the chatbot. Right, so that's basically everything what I'm doing right now. I'm slowly but steadily integrating this entire thing. Okay, so let's go to the compilation errors and see what we have in here. Expression must go, okay, so I did a fucky wacky and potentially oopsie doopsie, so here I supposed to have func. Right, so syntax error, so I'm supposed to have these things in here and these things in here. So a new line, yeah, so I keep saying that over and over again. So don't you find this ironic? Don't you find this ironic that this language doesn't require any semicolons at the end of the statements, but if you are defining elements of an array of a structure, it's gonna be so annoying it will require you to put these commas in here. Don't you find this ironic? Just think about it. Like, why? It's so weird. We got some subs. Let me actually acknowledge the subs. Actually one. Destroy Computers, thank you so much for 46 months. Yo, 51 for the subscription with the message. So bro, yo, what's up bro? What's up? You're always welcome. You're always welcome, my friend, to my streams. Thank you so much. Thank you for being in here. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's been so relaxed about semicolons, but it's been so anal about these colons. It's just like, why? Why? I don't mind, actually. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't mind. I wouldn't even mind if it was super anal about semicolons, but like, why such inconsistency? Like, because Rob Pike decided so. Okay, so yeah, that explains everything. Just comment your question in code. Google will answer you in email. Nice. I mean, who needs Copilot after all? If you can just use Go Telemetry, and the actual Google engineers will get back to you and fix your problem. Not just like ChatGPT. Sorry. Anyway, that's a good joke. Let's try to run Zbot. I'm actually going ahead and running Zbot. Let me actually make it a little bit bigger. So can you see the chat, by the way? We're gonna do a ping. Okay. Would you look at that? Thank you, Kiyagutka. Hello from Bex, smiley face. Isn't that cool? I think it's pretty freaking cool. So yeah, so it doesn't really act as intended. So what we have to do, we have to now take all of these arguments, right? So we have to take all of the arguments, evaluate them, concatenate them in a single message, right? So concatenate them in a single message, and then send them, you know, as the message. We've got another sub. Yoink 2000, thank you so much for Twitch Prime. Thank you, really appreciate it. Wow, C almost eclipsed Python as the most popular language according to TIOBE? What? C is being popular again? Let me take a look. The fuck? UC10, thank you so much for 17 months. Thank you. Is it gaining popularity? What the fuck? This is because of my yesterday stream. I'm joking, it's probably not. So you see, it only took one C stream for me, and C is already overthrowing Python. And Visual Basic, like, it's so weird that Visual Basic is top 10. It's actually losing, but I mean, it's still weird. Probably because of the Microsoft Office, yeah. Because by itself, who programs in Visual Basic by itself? I'm pretty sure everyone just like writes macros for Office. An assembly language is a little bit sus in my opinion, because assembly language is not really specific language. It's a family of the languages, right? So which assembly is the most popular one? Like, is it by assembly they mean x86-64, or do they mean ARM, or what exactly do they mean? It's just like a family of the things. So I don't know. Scratch. I'm also surprised that Scratch is popular. Rust is gaining popularity. What the fuck? I should stop actually programming in Rust because it's gaining too much popularity. We're not gonna give any more exposure to Rust. All right. So what we need to do? We need to iterate through the arguments and just like evaluate them and concatenate them. What's interesting is that arguments can evaluate to strings, integers, and other function calls. So that's kind of the problem, right? So what if one of the arguments literally evaluates to this functor? How are we supposed to print it? I have a feeling that this is going to be a runtime error. We're going to allow only printing strings and integers. We're not going to allow printing anything else. Are people really writing more Excel macros than websites? What the fuck? I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm pretty sure Excel runs the entire world. I'm pretty confident that Excel runs the entire world. All right. So hello from Bex, and so let's actually iterate this entire thing. I keep forgetting how you iterate. So first comes the index, and then comes the element. Then comes the element. So for index, arg range args. Right, there we go. So then we do context eval expression. Right, we evaluate the expression arg. So, and what we get in here is the result. Right, so this is the result or an error. In case of an error, if we've got an error, what we have to return, it's not new, we're gonna return like a void expression and the error itself. So we basically bubbling it up. Right, then after that, we need to check that result is either string or integer. So I think we're gonna use switch case for that. So this is the result, and I think it's kind, right? So I'm pretty sure it is kind. It's type, okay, sure. So it's integer, string, variable, right? So essentially, these two things should never happen if everything is performed correctly, right? If everything performed correctly. Honestly, like the problem is that you may have a variable that contains literally AST of function, right? And because of that, you won't be able to properly print it anyway. So because of that, we need to check this entire thing. So this is going to be the case if type is what expression integer. So this is one thing, and then it's going to be str. And if it's something else, if it is something else, we have to report an error. I'm pretty sure about that. So it's going to be expression, and what we need to say in here. It's rather interesting. So I need to say something very descriptive, right? So I'm probably gonna do fmt error f, right? So this is how you create a new error in here. So let me actually readjust everything so you can see the entire thing. Okay, so I'm gonna put it at the top in here. Can you see stuff at the top? So I'm editing. So what the fuck is this shit? Oh. Nice code, by the way. Right, nice code, by the way. I'm indenting it too much, so it's difficult for Google Telemetry to actually steal my code. This is intentional. Their code analyzer is going to basically Stack Overflow while trying to analyze this code, and that is my goal, right? I'm doing that intentionally. My code is not shit. Well, it is shit, but it is on purpose. It's on purpose. It's basically to debate the Google analyzers, right? So they Stack Overflow. That's the whole idea. Anyway, so we can say something like this evaluated into something, into this, which is neither int nor str. So I can't say command cannot display that, right? So, and what we essentially can do, we can take arg and we can basically render it as a string, and then we can take the final result, right, and we also render it as a string. So in the error message we can see actual expressions in here, hopefully, right? Hopefully we'll be able to see actual expressions in here. Right, if this is an expression, if this is an integer or a string, we essentially have to append those things. By the way, people, I remember people ask me, what the fuck is this thing? This is basically leading white spaces, right? So if I have some leading white spaces, Emacs actually shows them to me, right? So if I just put something in here, it will go away effectively, right? So what I want to do, I probably want to create a string builder into which I'm going to be appending all of these things. Right, so that's basically what I want to do. Let's create SB, which is going to be strings builder, right? So this is a strings builder. And in here, we're going to essentially just do things like, let me take a look at go doc strings builder. So what do we have? We can write some shit. We can write string, which is probably fine, right? So SB write string, and then I want to convert an integer to string. Is there any easy way to convert an integer to string? Is there something like I to A or whatnot? Golang I to A, not A to I. Or maybe you can just do string. String conv. Yeah. Can't you just like take result as int and just do string? Isn't it something that you can do? Or probably you have to use strconf. I feel like you have to use strconf, so let's take a look at the strconf. I to A. And can it fail? It cannot fail. Okay, that's fine. Is equivalent to format int64. Okay, that's fine. So that means we can do strconf I to A. Right, and then I'm gonna put it like that. I feel like I wanna move this entire thing somewhere else, right? So maybe we're gonna have a function that creates EvalContext from the environment. I think that's a good idea, right? So essentially, let's just go ahead and create something like this. And it could be something outside of the Twitch as well, right? But we'll see. Right, so EvalContext from Twitch environment. Right, so here we're going to be accepting Twitch environment, right? I suppose Twitch environment. Can you just give me Twitch environment? Thank you so much. And we're going to return the EvalContext, right? So we're going to return EvalContext. Then EvalContext, I'm going to take this entire thing, EvalContext from Twitch environment, and I just provide this entire thing, EvalContext from Twitch environment, and I just return this entire thing. So I think it's a little bit easier to comprehend now. What do you guys think? I think it's a little bit better now, right? So because it was a little bit too nested. It was a bit too nested. Okay, so what about the write string? All right, write string. And essentially, since the expression is the string, you can just do result as str, not integer, str, and that is it. All right, so after that, we concatenated all the arguments. What we need to do, we just need to send that specific message, right? So this is going to be SB string, if I'm not mistaken. So let me take a look at strings builder, right? Strings builder. There we go. So do we have, we literally have a string. That's pretty cool. All right, so that's the entire implementation. That's how we implement string. But this is not enough, right? So this is not enough because what we can have in here, we also query the variable author. we also query the variable author, and we need to add that variable here as well. So in the scope we have functions, but let's also define vars. So according to Bex, right, vars is just a map of expressions, right? So it's literally a map of expressions. So map string expr, right? So we need to have author. And what is the author? The environment already contains at author, right? It's basically environment at author. So even though it's a function, we basically evaluate it once and we cache it into the scope, which may create problems in the future, but maybe not, because usually at author is not going to change throughout the execution of the command, right? And it's going to be cached for entirety of the execution of the command. We'll see. It's something to keep in mind. But this is an expression, right? This is an expression. This is not a string. So what we have to do, we probably have to construct literally an expression, right? So this thing should become as str, and the type should be expression str. There we go. So that's basically it. So now in the environment, right, in the actual environment, we have a variable and a function, right, custom function. So that's pretty cool. Seems to be working. Seems to be working. I'm really happy about all of that. So let's go. So I want to recompile and go to the compilation errors. Build Gatekeeper. What do we have? It's not a kind, it's a type. strconf. We have to import this entire thing. Let's go ahead and just import all of that stuff. And it seems to be working. It seems to be working. Okay, so let's see if it's going to answer the dead command. Right, is it going to answer the dead command? I'm going to restart the bot. Right, I'm restarting the bot. So we're going to try to ping this entire thing. It's so slow, my god. Well, what about dead? Dead. Okay, it worked. Right, so this entire thing worked. Right, so it evaluated this entire stuff, and now it is working. So what that means, we can now take all of our commands, including built-in commands like weather, for instance. We can split their functionality. Into these building blocks, like taking HTTP query and whatnot, and then get rid of this entire switch case. And basically put all of the commands into the database, right? So these are small scripts in the database, essentially. And the entire implementation of eval command is going to consist of just this thing. And the Bex is taken from the database, right? That's basically the idea. We can do a similar thing for Gatekeeper or some other stuff, right? Maybe we can try to do that right now. So we need to, we can't just move everything into the database like right away, because there's a lot of things in here, right? So, and some of the things are kind of difficult to import into the Bex, right? So I think I want to do that incrementally, right? So we're still going to have a separation between built-in commands and the commands that are stored in the database, and I'm going to slowly migrating the commands from the like hard-coded code into the database, right? So it's going to be like a longer process than just like quickly migrating all of that. So I'm going to just prepare it and slowly migrate all of this, one by one. Right, so maybe we need to create the table where we're going to be storing all of these commands. I think that makes sense, right? So here in the boot, I have the folder called SQL, right? And it contains migrations, right? So essentially, how does it work, right? On the first start, the bot looks at all these files and sequentially applies them to the database. So they contain SQL queries, right? So it goes through each file and just runs each SQL file on the database, right? And then it remembers which files it already run, right? And then the next time you run the command, it doesn't run things that it already run. If you want to update your database, you create a new file in here, right? So SQL. Then on the next run, the bot will see, okay, there is a new file in there that I didn't apply. It will first apply it, and this is how it's going to migrate to the new scheme of the database. So this is how it works in here. So this is migrations. Right. So, and it stores the information of what files were already applied in the database itself. Right. It stores it there. So we can even take a look at this kind of stuff. Like, so let me see. So opt postgres. It's actually, I think it's pg SQL bin psql, and I don't remember. I think you have to do db, just d, not db. Gatekeeper, right? There we go. So if we take a look at the tables, it has migration tables, right? And if we select everything from migrations, right? So it's a table, yeah. Right, it contains like literally information like what files were already applied, like file name, the query that was applied, and when it was applied. And so, for instance, if I add new file in there, it will check this table, then compare it with what it sees in a file system, and it will see that it needs to apply another file before even touching this database, because the code assumes a different scheme of the database. And if the code assumes different scheme of the database, it's not going to work correctly with the state of the database. So this is basically how we approach that. Right. So yeah, by the way, I build my PostgreSQL from scratch myself, yes. Because I'm using Debian Stable, not just Debian Stable, but old Debian Stable. Right. Let that sink in. Old Debian Stable. Right. Usually Debian Stable is already old, but this is extra old. So the way I use this entire thing is essentially if I need some sort of a software, right? I obviously cannot just install it from the repos if it's not something basic, right? So things like very basic things like core utils, I don't really care about that, right? If I need something fresh, I essentially download the source code and build it on my machine like a Slackware style, right? And what's interesting is that I think I reached the point where the new software that I'm trying to build is not happy with the libraries that I have on this machine. My libraries are too old. I'm already reaching the point that to build a new software, I first need to build a fresher library. And only then, on top of those libraries. Are you running the server on your machine? No, of course not. I'm running it on a separate machine with a newer version of Linux in a virtual machine. But I mean, for testing purposes, like to test things, I'm running it on my machine right now, but I'm gonna kill it right now. Right. You incrementally phasing out of old Debian. Exactly, right. So after some time, it's gonna be basically Linux from scratch, right? At some point, there will be no Debian in here. So are you drinking whiskey or strong tea? I'm drinking tea, actually. It's green tea, actually. Soon you won't be able to build new libraries because the compiler is too old. I'm using like the compiler that I downloaded from official Clang website. Right. So this is not a stock compiler. I mean, GCC is maybe is, but Clang is not. Right. It's right. So it's a little bit fresher than that. Anyway, so I'm probably like I need to spend some time to just upgrade my Debian Stable. I'm just like too lazy. And Linux, you know, Linux being Linux, like I'm just too afraid to touch anything. Right? I'm just afraid that this entire thing is gonna break, right? So that's basically it. That's basically it. Create table. So what we're gonna have in here, I suppose we're gonna have commands, right? So we have commands. And what's gonna be another thing? 1, 2, 3, 4. We need a name, right? Which is already probably taken, right? Because highlighting, but it usually doesn't matter. And the Bex of the command, let's call it Bex. I think it's a pretty good name. So in terms of in terms of what? So I'm thinking, do I want to limit the amount of characters that I want to have in here? Probably not. Let's actually do var char and 64 characters. Is 64 characters enough for everybody? This is 64 characters. So are we gonna have command that long? Right, are we gonna have command that long? I think it's already too old, too long. Right, I think that's fine. So this is the first limitations. In terms of the limitation of the Bex, do I want to limit Bex? Right, so if I say, all right, so you can have 1024. So here's the idea. I don't want Bex to be used as a real programming language. So essentially, if your expression is too complicated, you probably want to extract that expression to Go function. And I kind of want to encourage that. Right, so because of that, I want to limit the amount of stuff you can put in there. Right, but what if your command is just say a certain message, which is very long, right? What if it's just very long message? It's probably not gonna look great in chat anyway, because, for example, for Twitch, there's a limitation of 512 characters, if I'm not mistaken, right? Twitch cannot even display that many characters anyway. Like, I literally can't send such a huge message, right? So if I literally try to copy-paste this thing, I think it won't send that. Yeah, it even told me 500 characters, right? So 500 characters, I can't even say send that thing. So even if I need, oh, did it set it anyway? So it actually basically cut it out, right? So yeah, there's no reason to make this kind of stuff unlimited. And generally, I heard that it's advised in a database to limit basically everything. Just to put limits on everything, because you never know what kind of stuff may happen, and you will have databases like that infinitely grow or something, or some, you know, things that are uncontrollable, right? It's better to have some sort of limits in here. And because of that, I think it's going to be varchar 1024. I think it's a reasonable limitation. What about getting from a long URL? But the information that we get during evaluation of the command is not stored in the database. That's what's interesting, right? So, for instance, you can have a command, right, which is basically HTTP, HTTPS, what the fuck, getsomedata.com. The length of this command is 32 characters, which fits there. But the result may be longer than 1024. So we're not talking about actually returning thing, we're talking about limiting the database. So if you have data that is bigger than this size, it's not a concern of the database because it has nothing to do with the database. Right now we're talking about the database and how much you can store in the database. You see what I mean? So how much data we generated while evaluating this thing is not a concern of the database. You see what I mean, right? So it's about just storing the source code of the command. All right, it's like a completely different problem. Like it's not related to what we're doing here. Okay, so what I want to do, I also want to say that the name should be unique, right? I think it's reasonable to demand name being unique, right? So do I want to put any, you know, IDs in here or any indices right now? Probably not right now. Maybe later I'm going to put something in there. But for now, we can just keep this entire thing like that. All right. So let's take a look at the database, right? So I'm going to connect to the database, right? So this is what we have in here. I'm going to restart the bot, right? I'm going to restart the bot, and it should migrate. And as far as I know, it already migrated. And as you can see, we have commands, right? So if we take a look at what we have in the command from commands, there we go. So we can try to insert something into the commands, right? So let's insert into commands, essentially name Bex, and what kind of values do we want to insert into this thing? I have an idea. Long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, with the old bot, I had a command called steal, right? And essentially, what it would do. I think I have to do it like that. Yeah. Oh, this is actually so cool. Right, so since you're supposed to use single quotes, it's super easy to use double quotes in Bex. Right, it will take the argument that you provided. Right, so let's actually say, call it arg0. So this is the first argument that you provided into command. I'm going to say arg in the current year, and then some sort of a emote like kegw, right? Something like that. It's more of a like a joke of, imagine using X in 2023, right? And you would do a command that says something, right? Something like still go, and the bot will say go in 2023, right? Something like that. So that was the idea, so people can make fun of things, or make fun of old things in the modern year. So it was actually a very fun command. People really liked it. I want to bring it back. Right, so there you go. We brought it back. Now what we have to do, we have to essentially interpret this command. Right, we essentially need to interpret the command. It's as simple as that. Let me go into the commands. All right, so, and I think I want to go specifically into Twitch and update the context. So here we don't really have a year. I'm going to add the year, but I'm going to make a shortcut. Right, I'm going to make a shortcut. So I'm going to hardcode the year as integer 2023. But it should be unhardcoded. So I believe it should be automatically queried on the current machine. And then we should say, okay, unhardcode the year. Right, unhardcode the year. Alrighty, so that's pretty cool. So unhardcode the year. And another thing that we need to have is arg0. Right, arg0. The problem with that, it's reliant on the command. Right, so that means we need to get the command in here. Right, so because it's literally the argument of the command. So this one is going to be more of a type expression str, and as str, it's a command args. There we go. It's a command args. Cool. So we have all of these things in here. So that means evaluating this entire thing should be plausible, right? So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go to the command evaluation, and the first thing we're going to do, we're going to query the set command from the database, right? So we're going to query the set command. So how we can do that? I'm going to like literally hardcode all of that stuff in here. I remember that in Caretson we do a lot of database queryage. What is this word? So we query the database a lot. That's what I wanted to say. Okay, so db, yeah, query row. Right, so this is how we do that. I want to select name and Bex, maybe only Bex. Bex from commands where name is equal to how do you, yeah, so it's equal to $1. We don't really need to order anything. All right, there we go. So that's the query that I need to make, right? So select Bex from commands where name is equal to the name of the command, right? So it's literal command name, like that. Command name. So and essentially the next thing I need to do, I need to scan all of these, like all of the rows, but I expect kind of one, and I think there was a way to say that I expect one thing. Right, I remember there was a way to say that I expect one thing, but I don't quite remember. All right, so let's do go doc SQLDB. SQLDB query row context. Was there any, like, maybe it was something on the level of a scanning. So let's take a look at the row. in before chat attempts SQL injection. I mean, that's fine. I don't really care about that specific database, even if I fuck up. Right. Though, yeah, SQL DB escapes, but here's an interesting thing. You still can have a minor SQL injection, even if you use like a proper escaping and stuff like that. I recently discovered that you can inject SQL if you use like constructions. Right. You know what I mean? Right, so if I did something like name like, and then within the name you would do something like this, you can have a minor SQL injection that injects additional parameters in here. Like, and I recently discovered that, and I've never thought about that before. And it's, yeah, it basically suggests that you should probably avoid like. You can circumvent that, right? It's really easy to escape the syntax of like. It's nothing like escaping SQL, but still, right? I mean, if you should never like put user input into the like argument of like, right? At least that. MySQL real escape final version, yeah. You need a function like that. Just a second. Yeah. We need this kind of function because of real escape. And it's kind of like, once I discovered that, it actually spooked me a little bit. That means that it's not enough to just rely on escaping of the PostgreSQL. Right, you still have to constantly think about this, like SQL injections, even if you use this kind of escaping, because you can inject things through other quirks of SQL, not necessarily through the syntax of the SQL, because like it's like sub-language of SQL, and it's just like, can we just solve this problem once and for all? I don't know. I don't know. Ever thought about using SQLC? It lets you write schema and queries in SQL and generate Go code from that. This is basically adding additional layer of abstraction on top of things, and I don't like to add layers of abstractions without any particular reason if they don't solve like actual problems, right? Because these kind of layers, they don't come for free. They're like almost act like physical constructions, so that means you will need to deal with the complexity of that additional layer. Whether you want it or not, you still have to deal. You may think that it solves your problem, makes your life easy, but in reality, it all leaks through anyway. Right, so, all right. db.txt, yeah, it will be better to actually store all that in the text file. So name is equal to that, right? So the next thing I need to do is basically query the stuff, right? Rows next. And does anyone remember? I remember like that Go package for SQL had something to check for the rows. Row scan. Yeah, you can scan only once. I mean, yeah, if you expect only one thing, you can just do one single scan and just forget about it. I think that's reasonable. Right, so this is the follows frequency. Let's say Bex. Right, and Bex is supposed to be just a string. Bex string. We don't really expect anything else, and if it has no rows, yeah, okay. So essentially, if it has no rows, we have to execute one of these commands in here. That's going to be the idea, right? So if we didn't find such command, that's what we do. Right, so. But that's rather interesting. So how can I... It would be nice to have something like eval built-in command. Yeah. And then simply eval built-in command db command environment context. Easy. Right. All right, if error is still not equal nil, right? So something went wrong, right? So something went wrong, and we need to probably log that somewhere. Log print. We can still say something to the user about that, right? So we can still say something went wrong, please ask. So usually with the database. So I'm gonna copy paste one of these messages, I suppose. Just copy paste one of the messages. Eventually I'm gonna, you know, factor that out. Cap. Right. And we just return out of here. Right. If something went wrong, we just, yeah, whatever. Log print f error while querying command as. So the command is name, and then we get an error, right? We don't show that to the user, we just like querying that. Cool. So after that, we can just take the Bex and just evaluate it, right? We can just evaluate it. So, and the way we evaluate it the same way as we do with det, right? So I can just copy paste this entire code and go back and put it in here. So we already have Bex, we don't need to have it in here. Mods did an oopsie-doopsie while defining this command, ask to check the log, that's fine. And as you can see here, we had coded the det command, but now we can just simply remove that and can say command name, right? And the same thing is going to be here as well. Command name. Okay, cool. Right, so that's fine. Essentially, we query the command. If we didn't find it, we just evaluate the built-in command, right? So removed value for $1. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna just put it in here. Let's try to compile this thing and see if it's going to work. There we go. Okay, so let's go to the compilation errors. Commands, it's a single command, that's fine. Too many values, we don't have to return here apparently. Anything else? Okay, so here we also have to provide the command when we're constructing the EvalContext. Alright, so that works. That works. So we need to now try to evaluate the steal command, right? And steal command is not hard-coded in the source code, it's defined in the database, right? It's defined in the database and it should query it from the database. So what I'm thinking is that I'm gonna just split my screen a little bit in half. I'm gonna put this thing in here, right? So the chat is gonna be here. And I'm going to start the Gatekeeper, right? So now we should have steal go. Mods did an oopsie-doopsie while defining the command, right? So it says that it expected something in here. So mods did an oopsie-doopsie and potentially a fucky-wucky. All right. So I don't understand what's wrong in here. What exactly is wrong in here? Like it says expected. So that's the syntax error. It literally couldn't parse this entire thing. It says expected this, right? Always those mods. Yeah, exactly. Those mods. Get them mods. All right. Bex go. Gatekeeper. Expected this thing. So it usually happens when we have something like this. Команда не распарсилась, блядь. Сука. Anyway. So. Maybe we can just print Bex. So let's actually try to print this thing. Println and then log println Bex. Let's have some Bex chat together. It is compiling actually. Let me bring the chat so we can have Bex. And I'm gonna try to run this entire thing. Okay, so still. Well, I don't see any problems, right? I don't see any problems, so it says that this thing is not working. Maybe this is because it doesn't support the spaces in the stuff. Like, yeah. Or maybe I did some weird logic in here. Maybe not. We need to literally try to parse this thing locally, right? So we need to try to parse it locally. So let's go to... Let's go to some sort of setup. Where we're gonna try to parse all of this. So Bex dot go. Yeah, I'm gonna go here. So this is gonna be 2 func main. I'm gonna put this thing in here. I wonder, like, what exactly could have fucked up? Parse all expressions Bex. And then we give express error. If error not equal nil, fnt printf error as error, just os, maybe just return for expers range expers, and we can dump this entire stuff from 0. Okay. Go run Bex go. Okay, this is true. No, what? Yeah. Okay, expected this thing. So what's wrong with you, my friend? Okay, so let's start. Is that because of this thing? God damn it. You can't have numbers in variables. What a shitty language. Who made this language? Who the fuck made this thing? Let's actually quickly add support for that. Like, why not? Why can't we have that? Alright. Who the fuck made this piece of scheiße? Scheiße. Alright, so if this thing starts with letter, we keep... So if it starts with letter, span rooms, trim rooms, source rooms. Is there any particular reason why the fuck we do that? So I would expect some sort of so this is the digit. I see. I see. So span rooms, we just like, yeah, I see. We could try to do the following thing. X room. Letter or is digit. So essentially the variables have to start with letter, but then they may contain digits. Why didn't I do that? I mean, it's such a simple fix. I think, yeah. I think you can use ints in varnish. I mean, you're trying to pretend like you know my language that I coded myself better than me? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Like, I mean, yeah, now you can use digits in a variable names. Yes, I just implemented that. Yes, I just added that feature. All right, so I mean, I don't really know my own language that well, as you can see, so... okay, so what do we have in here? So this is a function, is supposed to return boolean. Okay, good. It compiles. How about that? How about that? Chat, 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 chat. Are you ready? The moment of truth. The moment of juice. Still go. First try. First try. And this command is defined in a database. Here it is. Here it is. I should be able to modify it, actually, believe it or not. I'm pretty sure I should be able to modify this command. So update commands, set Bex to something like, I don't know, we can set it to so we should do something like author, right? So let me put this thing in here so I can see shit a little better. Say author space the command was expired. Sorry. Smiley face. The command was expired. Sorry. And then where name is equal to still, right? So I can literally now modify on the fly, right? Can I do that? Now, if you just do still, if you do still, the command was expired. So as you can see, I modified it on the fly without restarting the bot. I just modified the source code in the database, right? So that's actually pretty cool, I think. arg0. So what we can say in year lol w. Let's actually put forehead. Forehead. Should be fine. Still. Yeah. Scripting languages. Still scripting languages. That's super cool. So I can also now add more commands, right? I can also now add more commands. As far as I know, we have when command, right? So we can maybe add vanish command. People were asking me about vanish command, right? So commands, I'm pretty sure it's not going to work because we are kind of escaping. We're kind of escaping the messages, so the bot cannot accidentally send the command, right? So I'm pretty sure it's not going to work. So we can do something like insert into commands, right? We're going to be inserting name and Bex values. So what kind of values we're going to insert? We're going to insert vanish, right? And in terms of what's going to be the vanish command, right? Let me see. So we can say timeout space the author for 1 second. I think this is how it works, right? So that's basically how it works, and it's not going to work properly. Values, right? So values. So let's actually do something like vanish. Yeah, so as you can see, it escapes those commands. Right, it escapes those commands. So one of the things, by the way, we can do, we can introduce another custom command, right? We can introduce another custom command that literally times out the user and doesn't use escaping, right? So it's going to say timeout. We can time out the author, though that means I have to parse the author, right? At some point, but yeah, I feel like it's not particularly useful. Right, insert. All right. So maybe we could introduce like a say unescaped, right? You know what I mean? Say unescaped from commands. Right. So update commands set Bex say unescaped. Oh, I know. Unsafe. Say unsafe. That's perfect. Right, and we're gonna say slash timeout space outer 1 second. Right, so that's what we're gonna do. That's what we're going to do. So and it's not going to work, by the way, again, but because we don't have a say unsafe, right? We don't have say unsafe. I'm really tired, so I'm trying to speak Russian. All right, so did it work? I think it did in fact work. Right, so if you try to do a vanish now, if you try to do vanish, it says mods did an oopsie doopsie while defining this command, ask Studium to check the logs, right? So and the reason is because vanish command unescaped character underscore. Fuck, it doesn't support underscores. What a shitty language. It doesn't support numbers in variable names and underscores in the function names. Okay, so I think this is something that we have to fix as well. So let's quickly fix that. Let's in fact quickly fix that. So when we are parsing a function, is letter. Oh, it depends actually. Yeah, so this is the same code that parses both function calls and variables, if I understand correctly, right? So this is a fun call if it contains this thing, but if it doesn't, oh, it's an expression variable. Okay, what the hell happened here, by the way? So that was weird, but yeah, that makes sense. So this is expression var, and so on and so forth. So that means here I just have to say or x is equal to underscore. So that's it. Should be pretty easy. So now we do support escape underscore, but we need to implement that command specifically, right? So say, there we go. So how can we even do that? How can we even do that? All right, so let's say unsafe, and I'm gonna literally copy paste this entire thing because it's like duplicate code, right? But I'm gonna unduplicate it later. I promise. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about. So instead of send message, we have to send something else, but it actually very much depends on the Twitch environment, right? So how do we do that in Twitch environment? I wonder. So we do send message, and this is what we're doing here. So I suppose it makes sense specifically for Twitch environment to introduce something like send message unsafe, right? Send message unsafe, where we effectively just do this entire thing, except we remove that dot in here, and this is the dot that sort of escapes any potential commands in here. So that's kind of the point in here. Say unsafe, right? And in here we send message unsafe. Right, there we go. That's basically the idea. Does it compile? It seems to be compiling. So let's bring the chat back, right? Let's. That was weird, but I suppose I just reloaded the configuration, so nothing particularly special. Right, so since I'm a mod, so vanish should not work on me. Right, but it should work on you. Now try. Did it work? Did it work? Oh, it didn't work. You know why? I feel like Twitch changed something with its commands. I think commands don't work through IRC anymore. I forgot about that. This is probably one of the reasons why Chitterina didn't work. My Chitterina didn't work anymore. Yeah. So I suppose commands, these kind of commands now are through their API, right? So that means we'll need to make API calls. All right, well, whatever. So vanish was actually a super fun command, but so basically it will time you out for 1 second and it will remove all your messages. So now we're stuck with just still REST API, still REST API in 2023. Lol. How do you connect to Twitch, by the way? Sockets? I'm using regular sockets. Should I use WebSockets? Should I use WebSockets? Maybe. Oh, it depends on the kind of sockets you're using, right? So it works in Twitch chat, but I mean, in Twitch chat, they can just actually proxy the commands through API calls, right? So since it's a web. Make vanish to not print, not found, please. What? What do you mean? Ah, I see what you mean. In Discord, like, yeah, sure. I'll do something like that. All right, so I implemented everything I wanted to implement. I integrated a small programming language into the thing. Right, into the chatbot. So now I should be able to migrate all of my hard-coded commands into the database and modify those commands by modifying the database. So does anyone have any questions before I go? Did you reverse the SQL query in your code from like to equals? I'm pretty sure I did. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah. All right. So, does anyone have any questions before I go? I suppose no questions, right? So you have an opportunity to ask me a question. So some people subscribed, all right? So I completely missed that. Thank you so much, UC10 for tier 1 subscription. Thank you. And Flasha Lamayo, thank you for Twitch Prime with the message, love you, big man. I love you too. Thank you. How do you write clean code? Just kidding. Thank you. Thank you for not forcing me to answer that question. All right, so I guess that's it for today. Thanks everyone who's watching right now. I really appreciate that. Have a good one, and I see you all on the next Azuzin session. I love you all. Mwah.